Hello, welcome to another Richard Herring's Leicester Square Theatre podcast. With me, Richard Herring, and my guest, John Maloney. If you're enjoying these, why not come down and see one live? Go to leicestersquaretheatre.com or richardherring.com/gigs, and you can find out all the details there. I'm also on tour throughout 2018 in the spring with my new show, Oh Friggum 50, and you can find out all about the dates there on my website, richardherring.com as well. Anyway, let's sit back and relax. And don't forget, you can buy emergency questions for Christmas and Christmas emergency questions for Christmas as well, probably by now. I'm not sure. Let's sit back and enjoy Richard Herring's Leicester Square Theatre podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Leicester Square Theatre. Please welcome a man who had nearly 5 hours sleep last night and feels that was a lot. It's Richard Herring! I tell you what, you're much better than last week's audience. Cunts. So welcome to Richard Herring's Leicester Square Theatre podcast. I was opening a bank account at the Gyro Bank. Open your bank account, Britain is the National Gyro Bank. You get a checkbook and everything. And the woman served me, she called it rehearsal. I don't know if that's going to catch on. So yeah, I mean, it's weird being back having a 2-week-old child again. I mean, I know my child's been 2 weeks for a long time for you people at home, especially given the order we're putting these out, and you're going to be very confused. But it's just not really getting any sleep. But you kind of end up in this a wonderful kind of place where you imagine everything you're saying is brilliantly funny, and flights of fancy. You just don't know. I'm not sure most of the time if I'm asleep or awake at the moment, and whether this is a dream or real. I'm presuming from the way everyone's just sitting, staring at me cross-armed, this is a dream. So it's fine. So I'm going to just crack on. I'm just going to get my cock out. No? See, I'm a modern man. That woman said no, so I will not get my cock out. Are you sure? No, I'm not sure. Just have a look at the tip and then make a decision. Then you can make a decision. Make an informed decision. I really should have a scripture. So it's all right. This is the dream one. This is the dream version. So we're going to be fun. I've decided to keep the jacket on. We'll see how that goes. Thank you. Yeah, it's good. This is from Debenhams. This is this is the suit I wear when I'm fat. Yeah, I've got some really nice suits that I bought for when I was thin. I don't know why I'm looking at you. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. We're brothers, mate. We're brothers. It's all good. But you know, from a distance, it could be. If you don't, it's not been fitted to my actual leg. That you'll notice. But that's how much respect I have for the man we buried today. So it's. He couldn't see. He was in a right old state. So it's time to move on. So let's crack. I was going to talk to the audience, but I think it's just best I don't. It's best I stop. I've just had a restraining order saying I'm not allowed to talk to anyone in the front row anymore. Quite rightly so. Our guest this week is probably best known from his appearance on Die Harold Schmidt show. That's why we're here, to see him. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please welcome John Maloney? Oh. Yes, let's sit down. Sit down and make yourself at home.
All right, okay.
How are you doing?
I'm doing very well.
Good, thank you.
What's weird about this is that I remember one of the first times I met you, where we actually spent a bit of time together, was about 10 years ago in Montreal.
That's right, yeah.
And when I first started in comedy, which is far too long ago, I was always quite intimidated by you.
Really?
Yeah. Because I just saw this kind of force of nature, this kind of intellectual giant of comedy and you know, somebody who could just weave gold out of shit. Funny shit, obviously. And then when I met you, I realised you're just like the same as the rest of us.
Yeah.
And that's nice.
Oh, good. Well, that's nice. I think there was a compliment there somewhere.
There was. There was an absolute compliment.
That's very nice,
I just
John.
wish that we could be friends.
Yeah.
I've always liked you.
Well, you know, I think what's interesting is being a comedian, which is I think I might mention this in another podcast, but with Sean Hughes, who sadly died last week, and I've just been at his funeral. He wasn't someone I saw a lot, but I was talking about this to Ed Byrne when he was doing the podcast, I think backstage. But as comedians, you don't see each other for 5 or 6 or 7 years, and then you just see each other and you're just back into the... I think the kinship of the job, and the fact that that's just the way it is, isn't it? You're on a bill with each other, and then you see each other and you're sort of back to where.
And then there's people that you grow up in the industry with, who then you don't see as often because either you get busy or they get busy. You both get busy, and then you're like families and stuff, and so you don't. I mean, a friend who I grew up with in the industry was Bill Bailey. Bill and I started around the same time when he was in a double act called the Rubber Bishops, who was superb. And so we kind of knew each other well, and he's the same kind of person. If I don't see him for 2 years, or we chat on the phone occasionally, but like, "Hello, John, how are you?" And it was like it was yesterday. And of course, there is a kind of kinship in this business, and they have a comedian's Christmas party every year in the first week of January that the lovely Susan Murray puts together. So it's where the comics can download after being attacked verbally and physically over the Christmas period by the British people who are so good at Christmas. It really is the time of goodwill. So the comics, and the thing that she always puts out in the advert for the night is no civilians.
Right.
And I know that sounds like a rather sort of odd word to use, but I get exactly what she means.
Yeah.
That sometimes it's just you just need people who are as mad as you in the same room.
Yeah. Well, it's good, but people come from lots of different backgrounds as comedians.
They certainly do.
And it's whatever people say, oh, you've got an advantage because you go here or you come from there. But actually, you've got to be able to make people laugh, and that's it. So you've got to be good at what you're doing. Yeah,
I mean, when I started out, I was very angry about everything. Of course, my first act I was called the Angry Young Accordionist. I know, and I used to go on stage and rant and rave about the politics in Ireland and Red Wedge and all this kind of stuff. And I used to play the accordion in between ranting at people. And one of my opening phrases was, the definition of a gentleman is somebody who can play the accordion but chooses not to. Which then I would follow up with, because Oscar Wilde, in fact, actually said that.
Right.
Yeah, he was hilarious. But then again, he also said one night, "Not tonight, Lord Bosie, I've got an arse like the flag of Japan." But they never talk about... That quote isn't quite as famous. Was that a bit rude?
No, that's it. Give me as rude as you like on this. Don't worry. Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about before we get on to the Harold Schmidt show, which you're best known for.
Yes.
With the Red Wedge, so you would start off as a musician, is that right?
Yeah, I was an Irish. I'm from an Irish family, and so my
John
parents,
Maloney.
I know, who'd have thought? I know, well spotted, Morse. So, so I played the accordion from a very young age, 8 or 9, 10. I started at that age and used to play in all the Irish pubs and stuff. Yeah. And then my girlfriend at the time got back from, she was the president of the Students' Union in about 1983-84, and she came in one evening and said, they're putting this thing called Red Wedge together, which was kind of artists for labour, essentially. And she said, they're looking for a secretary, somebody who can sort of like take all the minutes and stuff, and because I was a student, I was doing nothing. So, I was studying German. I eventually became a German teacher. Well, I wasn't German when I was a teacher. I was teaching the language rather than just taking over other classrooms for no apparent reason. I was teaching rather than, their kind of genetic urge. It was just a thing. It was a language thing, is what I'm trying to say. My granddad actually shot down 2 German planes. Unfortunately, he did it in 1971. But, he said, you can never be too careful. And the way things are going, he's probably right. Yes, so Red Wedge, yeah. So they needed a secretary for Red Wedge, and Paul Weller used to turn up because he'd left the Jam and gone into the Style Council. So the first few meetings, I was just sitting there like, it's like kind of the rush of no blood from the head. I was just almost like in fainting mode, seeing one of my heroes used to go to most of the meetings, and then eventually slagged off Red Wedge. He said it was too political. The clue was in the title, mate. But it was just I was being pushed around by politicians. No, you weren't. You were hopefully selling the Labour idea to youngsters, and like Billy Bragg was there, and people like Lenny Henry would come along, and so it was just amazing. as a 20-year-old boy to be sitting with these kind of cultural musical comedy icons and you know, you'd go, anybody go for a pint after? You'd be sitting in a pub in like Stockwell with, you know, Jerry Dammers and Paul Weller, and it was just amazing. And then we Addison Cresswell, God rest him, organised the Red Wedge comedy tour. And I had the balls to phone him up one afternoon and said, do you know what you need during the interval? You need somebody to play the accordion. And Addison, who was a very famous agent, he passed away a few years ago, so unfortunately. So you've got some balls, mate, to you just call me up and say that, you know. So, while the students mass disappeared into the student union bar to buy a pint of bitter for 7 pence, I sat in the interval playing the accordion and eventually got moved to second on the bill after Craig Charles doing some poetry, because you should always follow poetry with an Irish London accordionist. It's been the classic theatre move ever since. I believe it heavily influenced people like Bogdanovich these days. He generally puts an accordion player in... No, he doesn't. That's just nonsense. So that was Red Wedge, and I loved every minute of it. Loved every minute. You know, you see these stars and stuff.
Yeah. How successful was the Red Wedge tour in getting the Labour?
We lost. Lost in because the election was 1985, wasn't it? Yeah, and then they hung on with all us until 1991, wasn't it? And then us lot came in 97, I think. I can't remember exactly. No, 1987 was the election. That's it, June the 11th, 1987. That's right. Suddenly it all kicked in. Suddenly the OCD kicked in. So yes. Yeah, we lost, but don't blame me. I did my best.
It's all down to the accordion. Everyone was saying, I'm going to vote Labour. Oh, not the accordion.
No, God, there's a bloke playing a Palasoprani dual couple of BC accordion. Oh, no, it's just, I hate chromatic accordions.
So basically you just started doing jokes around that, and then the accordion kind of got...
Yeah, the accordion thankfully, got squeezed out.
Hey!
Got squeezed out.
If you'd only thought of that joke at the time, you'd still be using
I'd still be doing the interval.
Because Jim Tavares stuck with his...
the double bass.
Yeah, double bass.
But he was funny. You know, I was shit. I was genuinely... I mean, maybe some critics consider that still to be the case, but I would just like rant about something. I remember doing gags about... if the Republic of Era, or Era as it's called, Ireland, had been called Nicaragua, you know, people might have had a bit more of a consciousness about it like that. And then so it was just rubbish. And at the end, I'd sort of go, Thatcher's rubbish, hooray! And then, then I get booked again. So it was that. It really genuinely was that simple in those days. You know, tawdry gags, hate Thatcher, done. Repeat gig.
And so after that, did you leave the comedy behind for it and go into teaching, or were you still doing the comedy during the teaching?
My father, God rest him, said to me, get a trade before you do any of this comedy nonsense. So while I was doing open spots and stuff, which is unpaid gigs where you go up and you try and do a bit and then hopefully you get paid by the club, he was, sensible enough as he was, said, no, get yourself a proper job just in case it doesn't work out. And, 28 years full-time now, so it has kind of worked out. But I understand that he was right. I guess I did it in order that he didn't have sleepless nights rather than me, you know. Well,
I think, again, it's a similar... When I wanted to do comedy, you know, it was the same thing for our parents' generation. Yeah. It was just an absolute no-go. There was no reason why anyone who hadn't worked in showbiz and had no...
See, that's exactly right. And I think the only time I think that he thought that I'd kind of made it, as it were, is when I would phone from exotic places. You know, like I'd phone up from like Hong Kong or something, or Sydney Comedy Festival or Melbourne. I'd phone up, oh, Dad, I'm in Melbourne. You know, like, Eileen, quick, get to the Ford. He's in Melbourne. Cheers. He's in Hong Kong. You know, so the fact that I was allowed to get on planes to do what I do meant that it had a certain validity for him and for them, I suppose.
Yeah, but I just remember when I was, you know, when you're in your 20s and getting flown out to Canada or Australia or wherever, it was just, you couldn't believe that this was happening.
I still can't. I was just in Bahrain last week for a couple of nights doing some gigs, and it still amazes me. I still genuinely, firstly, love the job, but secondly, realise how bloody lucky I am that for something that you actually enjoy doing, that people will firstly give you money for it, and secondly, show you a bit of the world at the same time. It's just amazing. It's crazy. It's crazy.
So I think you're a very interesting comedian for lots of reasons.
Oh, yes.
And it's quite hard to kind of get this
I'm a bit
Damn.
worried about this next bit.
Well, it's because you have been working on the club circuit for, as you say, 28 years.
Yeah. I went full time when I was about 25, so about 28 years.
But you've still and a lot of the club comedians go. I'm not going to do Edinburgh shows. I don't. You can't get onto the radio, can't get onto the TV. There's a lot of sort of bitterness, and I think a lot of it is justified amongst. The excellent. Well, I think what's interesting, you're doing lots of interesting things. I just think there's so much I'm trying to get into this sentence. It's a bit hard to express. But a comedian like you, who's been working for 28 years, the TV companies aren't like banging down your door going, we want you to come and present something.
No.
But yet, there's no other job you would do where someone who'd been working for 28 years would be looked over, and someone who'd just come in. Like in the last 6 months and done. Yeah,
this is true. They're now training embryos to do comedy now. It's kind of like IVF comedy is now happening. But that's okay. There's a great quote by a comic called Liam Maloney who said, and I don't 100% agree with this, but I get the sentiment. He says comedy is a little bit like sex, that people will pay money to watch young people doing it badly than older people doing it well. And I sort of agree with that. Yeah. I mean, when I go to festivals around the world, as we are lucky enough to do, the older comic, male or female, are celebrated by the fact that they're still bloody well doing it. Do you know what I mean? There's a guy called Owen Barker, who's a Canadian comic who passed away a couple of years ago, who's in his 70s. But he was just as much celebrated as being on the international festival circuit and on all the international TV galas as some 24-year-old, just out of uni, scrabbling to teach German. Yeah. That and I like that, and I think that's something that we're going to have to find here, because the older comics here, people envisage that they're the kind of Dickie Bow mainstream comics, whereas in fact we're all getting older now.
Yeah, of course.
And even people like Les Dawson, I mean, he was 43 before he was first on television. I mean, 43 years old. Yeah. And I mean, his stuff, one of my favourite jokes is he says to his missus, he says, and of course this is how he says to her, do you believe in reincarnation? And she says, you what? And he says, do you believe in reincarnation? She says, what's that? He says, you could come back as a different animal. So she says, what, I could come back as a cow? He says, you're not listening. Now the thing with that, it's if you want to be offended by that, great, there are children starving in this world, so get some fucking perspective. But the thing is, but that's just, because that's, to me, that's just lyric, that's got everything in a joke. Okay, it's good, it's sexist, but what it is it's the perfect, because it's got the repetition of the Jeopardy, and it's all there in one thing.
Well, and it's about him, regardless of whether it's, it's about his feelings about his wife,
so which weren't real anyway.
And it's a little play within the thing, so it's a pretending, but it's, that's when you... You've been trying to get together, and I think you're doing quite well with this, aren't you? Trying to get basically live at the Apollo for comedians over 50.
Yeah, I saw the listings 2 series ago for the live at the Apollo, and excellent. Please don't get me wrong, excellent comics. But I just thought that they were all just rather on the young side. So when I was sitting there one night sniffing an arrogant Sauvignon Blanc. It had, honestly, the bouquet was just irresistible. As was the second bottle. I wrote down Dead at the Apollo. I thought that was quite a nice idea for old buggers like me. So, and then I sort of put it out in the ether on Facebook last year. It was on October the 28th, oddly enough, that I put it out on Facebook, and I remember that because the day before would have been my dad's birthday, and I'd lost him a couple of years back, and I was feeling shit, and I thought, no, turn this bad feeling into something positive, and then so I just wrote that down and then put it out there, and loads of comics came back to me, said, well, this is just a great idea, try and make it happen. So we're going into production in January. We've hired a theatre. All the comics have to be over 50. All the crew have to be over 50. And the other proviso I've sort of said to the other comics is not to mention our age, because I don't want 24 comics going, oh, God, me back, oh, So it's just going to be... Because essentially there are probably 30 or 40 headliners, people who have been headlining massive clubs for a quarter of a century who I think just deserve the break. And we've all had our break in terms of that we're actually working and living and doing what we enjoy doing. But there are, people like sort of Pierre Hollins or Paul Thorne or Mary Burke or Nina Benjamin, people like that, who are just fantastic. And I just think they need an airing. And so we're actually funding it ourselves as well. Every comic, as I've said, we've got to put £1,000 in each in order to get the production budget together. So what we want to do is take it to, rather than sort of make a pilot and go, oh, can we have some more? We're actually going to make 8 of them. Yeah. And then just take it to the television companies and say, well, here's the finished product. Here are 24 headliners. And if you don't want it on your channel, why not? Because that would kind of worry me, really. Well, they're not funny. Oh, well, these people have been doing it for a quarter of a century. Who can walk into a very indifferent room where they're not well known, and essentially, so in football terms, they're 1-0 down, and within 20 minutes they're winning 5-1, and then they go on to another gig and do the same, and then go to another gig that night and do the same. These are incredible people.
There are some, and I know exactly kind of actually talking about. I did a benefit gig at the Bannon. I can't remember if you were on, but it was like I think you might have been. It might have been your benefit gig, but there was. I'm very old. I can't remember. But there was just there was 4 or 5 guys, and they all came on, and they absolutely killed it. And I don't do 20-minute slots in clubs very much, and I really struggled to do it because it's a really difficult. Yeah. After they've done so well, and it's made it so effortless.
I mean, the hour shows, which I know you've done for many years, and I mean, you are so incredibly prolific and just, I mean, fantastic at what you do. But an hour show is very different to a 20 minutes. I mean, you've got a loyal. When you go to Edinburgh now, people know who you are, and they know they're going to get a great hour because you've got an incredible comedy brain. You're an incredibly funny man, and they know that they're going to get that. But when it's somebody who, as I say, is 1-0 down, that there's as much art in that as there is for somebody doing an hour, which might be, say, like a conceptual hour about something. But I've seen comics just turn a room round which looks impossible, and just that the art of being able to do that, and it is an art. Okay, it's not saving lives. We're not brain surgeons, but you know what I mean? There's something still pretty damn impressive about it.
But you get so many, even doing this podcast, I get emails from people who are saying, I was very depressed, or I was going through something really terrible, and this helped me through. And comedy does have that function, So that's I know there's sort of with comedians there's bitterness and there's backbiting and saying, why they're doing well and I'm not doing well. I think there's a lot of camaraderie as well behind that.
There's more positivity than there is negativity.
There is. But, you can understand there's only a certain number of spaces, I suppose, if you want to make that move up. And I think to a great degree, the longer I've gone in my career, I've thought exactly the same as you're saying. Hey, the fact I'm doing this, I'm doing this on my own terms, this is the success. It doesn't need to go any further than that.
It doesn't.
You can understand those guys.
Yes, of course.
Who've just done every Saturday for 25 years and stormed it and going, why is this kid on TV and I'm not on TV?
Well, you see, I think that's a very good point, and that's something that I thought of as well, because one of the people who I was fed up of listening to moaning about it was me. so I just thought, well, this can be done. With respect to anybody who works in the entertainment industry on the other side of the camera, it's not rocket science. You hire an experienced production crew, you put them in a good theatre, and hopefully, because of their experience, just say, well, press record and let's see how we do.
But that's, I think that's a good in essence is a realisation that I had in doing this. You can just get on and
just do it
yourself. Yeah. And I think it's a great idea that everyone put some money in to do it, and then they've invested
also,
in it. And it's not
I'll tell you a little secret here. There were some comics who are fantastic, but you know what? They haven't got £1,000. They don't have a spare £1,000. And there are other comics who are subbing them. Yeah. I can think of 3 comics who I won't name, so it wouldn't be fair to them, who have said, I'd love to do this, but I can't find a spare £1,000. Yeah. But I know 3 other comics who do have a spare £1,000 and said, well, I'll pay for them.
That's brilliant.
And that's pretty damn cool, isn't it? And that shows the spirit behind it. And then there's another very famous comic who I sent an email to and said, we're a little bit short on production budget, and he has pledged £5,000 towards the production fee. And that's somebody who is filling stadiums and just went, actually, go on. Yeah. And so that shows the spirit behind it. Yeah. But it's a little bit of a shame that it has to be like that. It should just be that these men and women are funny. The fact that they are of a certain age should be irrelevant. But unfortunately, it's not.
Yeah, but I think that in lots of ways people are breaking through the barriers that there are closed shops in all these things, and it's difficult to get through. We were talking about backstage. I find it very difficult to get into any of those panel shows, and I think I know I'd be good on some of those panel shows that I can never get on, and it's you know, and that's all you've got on TV now. So it's so to just do it yourself. But what I like about you, as well as having worked very hard as a stand-up and done those clubs, you have said, I'm going to do Edinburgh, and you do Edinburgh every now and again. You do like
every 3 or 4 years. I go up and do an hour, and it's more sit-down comedy really, because it is. I just sort of like I have a high stool, just put on a shirt and tie and talk for an hour. There's no massive presentation. It's just literally not even a follow spot, just a spot. And so I cut down to that, and I try and kind of make the words do the work rather than jumping up and down. You know, I remember once in Edinburgh, it was not 2010. I moved on stage at about 3 foot, and I was knackered. I had to take the next night off. It wasn't easy. You know, so.
And that's led to you getting your Radio 4 show that you've done.
Yeah,
a few series of.
I've done a couple of series imaginatively called the John Maloney Show. It's me. And then, who was he? It's just a fat bloke with a lesbian haircut. Who is he? Fucking hell, Katie Lang's let herself go, hasn't she? Constant craving? I don't think so. Constant fucking chocolate. Yeah, so... Why did I pretend? That was very Brechtian, wasn't it? Did I break down, or did I build the fourth wall just then?
I'm not sure what you did. You made a fifth wall, I think.
It was die Verfremdungseffekt. Yeah, I'm feeling a bit alienated. Yeah, grammar school. Do you know what I mean?
But was it the first series or the second series that a clip got on Pick of the Year on Radio 4?
Yeah,
that is a pretty impressive.
Yeah, it was episode 1 of series 1. I was doing a piece about my cat.
Oh, yeah.
Edward, who was diagnosed as being stressed. I took him to the vet, and then the vet said he's stressed. And the issue being he sleeps for 23 hours a day. So for that one waking hour window, he can't cope. So that was the essence of this sketch that was Pick of the Year. Just about the fact of having to take him to have his temperature taken, which he didn't enjoy. In fact, he made a noise that I'd never, that's the noise he made as the thermometer entered his anus. And this is the kind of thing that Radio 4 were craving, which is why it was Pick of the Year. So, yeah. And then the second series was just done all right. That was Podcast of the Week or something. And then I just found out relatively recently that they've commissioned a third series, so... let's see.
It's brilliant, though.
Well, I'm happy, I mean, it's obviously... Well, I never thought that... It's a difficult thing that certain things you think aren't your natural constituency or your natural home.
Yeah.
And then as I've got older, I realised that most of the prejudice is mine rather than other people's.
Yeah.
I think they used to call it chip on the shoulder. But that's the thing they always used to keep the working classes down. The ruling classes have always done that, inbred syphilitic bastards. But the thing is, I just turned off the ironometer. I didn't think that would be my thing, but it is, and I'm delighted. Because Radio 4 is one of those. It's just kind of this iconic cultural, and they say to you, will you do something for us? And wow, yeah. I still have that thing of wanting to pinch myself about it, because, I still didn't think it was for me. I can't put it any less well than that.
And do you think, is there any chance of that going on and getting taken up by TV as well?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I hope so, because they're kind of series of sort of sitcom-y, sketchy monologue type stuff. There's all bits of everything going on. Like one of the episodes, the last one, was me just doing, being at the other end of the phone trying to get my utility company changed. And we all know the nightmare that is, all the security names and numbers and all this, and the first school you went to and all that. So they're all sort of self-contained units. There's no particular continuum. But the two most popular episodes have involved my cat, of course. You try and write this kind of coruscating, visceral satire about the state of the nation, and the funniest episode is the cat having a thermometer put in his bum, which generally is quite funny, really, because he did make that noise, and he looked quite disappointed when I didn't buy him dinner. Or the vet. So yeah. It's lovely to have a thing on Radio 4. It is,
No,
I hope.
But I just think, because I think it is a lot of it is about a lot of these things in life. Not just in comedy. People think, there's no point in me applying for that job or that university or that. If you get up and give it a go, you might be proven right. You might not get there.
But I mean, you're from an ordinary background, aren't you? You're a pretty ordinary guy.
My parents are teachers,
and Stuart was a pretty ordinary background as well. And the two of you achieved massively. You got to one of the best universities in the world. And I mean, did your career start? Were you doing like footlights? I can't remember.
It's the Oxford Review.
Oh,
I don't like to talk about going to Oxford, but we did the Oxford Review. So I loved comedy as a teenager. That was my whole thing. I didn't like music. I liked comedy.
Do you think Oxford? Do you think that did help you more than if you hadn't?
I'm not sure.
Do you know what I mean?
I'm not sure because yes, in a lot of ways. Because we met some people and we had 3 years of doing comedy instead. I should have been studying.
Tell me about it. I know.
So you had that safe environment, but that could have been anywhere. And that could have been another university.
Yeah,
to be
true.
fair.
Because Manchester Uni had a hiatus, didn't it?
Ben Elton and
all that lot, the young ones in that era.
Yeah.
So
it's just finding people that you work with, and Armando and Ben Moore and Al Murray and Kevin Cecil.
He's a genius. Al Murray is. I do this thing every year called the Balham Comedy Festival, which Richard very kindly has done over the years. But Al Murray's set 2 years ago, that hour, I mean, he's untouchable. Yeah. He is unbelievable. His energy, the writing, you just watch it and go, let's go back into teaching, and all the other comics go, yeah, you're right. Not just me. Yeah, you should go back into teaching. Maybe I should. But every other comic's like, why do we bother doing this? And I think another comic who's very much like that is Mark Steele as well.
Yeah.
Mark Steele is incredible. I mean, just the use of language and just the passion of it all, the way that he can take an idea and just run it to its most ridiculous extent. I mean, Al Murray said one night that he minimalises everything. Like, what's the most ridiculous position that you could get to in a joke, and then you move backwards from that to build it to there.
Yeah.
And I thought that was such a lovely idea because he had that great joke about the Channel Tunnel train that it takes from Waterloo to Dover takes about like 4 hours. But once it gets from Calais to Paris, it only takes like an hour. The fact that it's more efficient, but it is in fact because the driver is English and he just wants to get out of France as quickly as possible. It's such a lovely, and what a great. See, he will have started with that as an idea and then come back from it, and that's why I just adore Al Murray. I think the pub landlord is just genius.
But what was nice about the Balham Comedy Festival, which I wanted to go on to as well, but you draw comedians from a lot. When I did it last, Paul Daniels, or maybe the time before Paul Daniels.
Paul Daniels did it 2 years in a row. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm friends with quite a lot of mainstream comics. Jim Davidson is a friend of mine, which generally makes people go boo, boo like that because it's such a lovely natural knee-jerk reaction. Well,
you're very different. You're very different politically.
Yeah, I'm a fierce Corbynite, and he's So. But see, that's one of the reasons that we get on, is that we are so politically different.
Yeah.
But, of course, there have been stories about Jim in the papers over the years, but there were stories that don't come out about Jim. For example, there was an Asian woman, she was a police officer, she was killed outside in Luton a few years ago, and her husband had a nervous breakdown because, as one would, not surprisingly, of course, and he was going to lose his home and that. And then so Jim put on a benefit at the Luton Empire, whatever it was, and paid off the guy's mortgage. Now that's not good news for the papers. Papers don't want to say that Jim Davidson has raised money for an Asian family. They don't. That doesn't suit their narrative.
Yeah. And
yet he did. Now we would go, oh, he did that once. But you know what? Sometimes just give the guy a break. He's there are people of various political hues who aren't particularly nice, but. I'll defend him. I think he's underneath that complicated, difficult man, there's a heart of gold, and and I've seen it. And then sometimes he can be impossible. But that's just his nature. We go out for a Chinese meal after doing a show with him or something. I remember he did this one night. He just sat there. I could just see the cloud, and he just went, "I've just got to go." And then he just got up and no big flouncy showbiz thing. He just went. Oh, no. And so he can be a troubled soul, but he's a nice man in there. There is. I'm sorry it doesn't suit everybody's opinion of him, but I can only give.
Well, I like
mine.
that about you because I think a lot. As you say, I mean, you're kind of not exactly a contradiction, but because you're kind of conservative with a small C, I think. You're very much a family man, and you're Catholic, and you're very religious. But you are very, you're very on Twitter. You're always having a nip at the more right-wing Labour MPs, and in a friendly way, I think. But
it's not that friendly. I want them deselected. Fucking quislings. So yeah, I do. Wes Streeting and I. He's the MP for the area that I grew up in. He and I have an occasional tete-a-tete on Twitter. 144 characters of bile from me. It's just my opinion is just spend more time attacking the real enemy. Attack the Tories. If you spend as much time attacking them as you do Corbyn, well, we might have got a few more seats. I think that Corbyn is the best thing that's happened in British politics in my lifetime, and I've been involved actively in politics since I was 18, because it's just exciting at last. We've got somebody who actually says what he fucking means, and it's just beautiful. Thank you. One person back. And the rest rustle their guardians in disgust.
He's a very nice figure, and I did have a problem with him, but my problem really was I thought he wouldn't get elected.
That's right, and that was everybody's problem
initially.
I
still voted for him, but I didn't think he'd get elected. So that is exciting.
Yeah, but what he did as well, which was fantastic, in his first PMQs, and don't forget, he was very awkward about this, because he was the backbencher who had a conscience, while the rest of the Labour Party MPs would file out as he was saying what he thought about a political situation. So of course he was a bit crap for the first few PMQs, but what he did, which was very interesting, is that he would bring up a letter from a member of the public and say, Julie from Chorlton. And at first it was like, woo, and then actually that's now become part of the political currency. Actually, here is a member of the public who has written to me, because these letters have to be real, otherwise he would have been hung, drawn and quartered by now. Yeah. And that's so when the conservative syphilitics would jeer him. Look, he's reading a letter out from the Great Unwashed. I bet it smells of cabbage. And they'll never understand our literary illusions. That it suddenly became it's now part of the mainstream for a member of the public's letter to be read out. And I think that's brilliant. Yeah. And I think Momentum is brilliant as well. Yeah. The fact that Momentum is going into these various seats to get rid of these bastards. Do you know what I mean? I think we're going to Uxbridge next Saturday to get rid of his name, Cunty the pretend clown. Boris Johnson, that's the fellow. Bejabers, something in Latin, ad infinitum. Ha! So I think there's been some great...
Yeah, I agree, and I think, it's what's interesting...
I feel like I need to get my accordion out again.
You can do. No, it's good.
I'm getting angry again.
No, it's interesting. It's
It's challenging.
Well, what's interesting about it, but it's also interesting that Corbyn didn't toe the line in the other way, So you can say all that very much, but when he was a backbencher, he was doing exactly what the other people, what you're accusing the other.
But there was only one of him.
Yeah.
And so that's absolutely right. Yeah. He voted against most.
So you have to stay with what he stayed with what he believed, and so those other politicians are as well. And I agree that if you're a Labour supporter, the Conservatives.
But they're scared shitless of him. They were laughing at him 2 years ago, the establishment, everybody, and now they're scared shitless. Because what he did was he brought out the youth vote, as we know, and that's been the holy grail of politics since the Attlee government, is to get people between 18 and 25 to vote, and that's what he actually managed to do. And of course, the sneering press called it cultism. Of course, it can't just be young people for once going, oh, actually, I will voice my dissent or voice my agreement with this. Yeah. No, they have to be. They're all brainwashed. But did you see the Tories? They tried to do a Tory Glastonbury. They did in some field outside Harpenden or something. But 7 of them turned up with a couple of Jack Russells or something. You know what I mean? And so it didn't quite work.
Yeah, well, I think but I think certainly whoever it is, anyone under 40 and the young people who were saying we don't want all our TVs need to get together and fight against them, because they're just getting shafted by older people than us. It's the cunts over 60 who should be worried.
Yeah, yeah, and that'll be us quite soon.
It will.
Oh dear.
Yeah, and you're a religious man. I saw you. You're a man of. I think you're a quite contradictory.
Yes, I'm a yes/no person.
Yeah.
I'm a Catholic, I don't agree with everything within the Catholic doctrine, but then again, I know people who are humanists who send their kids to faith schools. So we can all have a contradiction. I think Marcus Brigstock always has a go at me about this, but I always say to him, this is just too beautiful just to be science. It's just too beautiful. And it's a lovely phrase from people of a certain age will remember a song called Ichigu Park by the Small Faces, where Steve Merritt sings, "It's all too beautiful." Yeah. And that phrase stuck with me since I first heard that song when I was 12, 13, 14. And it is just too beautiful. I mean, your son was born a couple of weeks ago, and that is, again, for the second time for you, I believe, probably one of the most too beautiful things that you will ever see. And I just think it's just greater than science. I think Ghosts by The Jam, track 2 from their final album, is better than science. It's too beautiful to just be music. Music is too beautiful. You know, the Mona Lisa is too beautiful just to be somebody going, oh well, you know, well what he could see there was mood and perspective. No, what he could see there was God. So that's how I see it. And maybe I'm old-fashioned, but there we are. But I managed to out-Catholic Frank Skinner one night though, because I beat him on the Catholic stakes. Because a mate of mine is a priest, Father Frank, and I've known Frankie for years. And we went to see a variety show because Father Frank's dad is actually Jimmy Cricket, the old comic. Correct, yeah. So me and Frank went to see Jimmy at the Croydon Fairfield Halls, and Frank Skinner was walking in, and my Frank, Priest Frank, was facing the other way from him. And when Frank said, "Oh, hello John, hello Frank, how are you?" and my Priest Frank turned around, I went, "Yeah, 1-0 to me." So Frank now brings the Pope with him to gigs. He's very competitive like that. You know. He goes to mass every day, I think he said. I don't think I could handle that.
No.
I think also, but sort of once a week or even once a fortnight, I'll be honest with you. Sometimes just to have that relative peace for 30 minutes is nice.
Yeah.
Just to sit there with the people you love the most, and then you could do that in a restaurant. Yeah, you could. But I do it in a church. Yeah. Sorry.
If you do it in a restaurant, you're not actually in Jesus' body and stuff.
No, there's no... what's it called? There's no transubstantiation.
Transubstantiation.
There's no transubstantiation. Yeah. You know, although the red wine is generally better in restaurants. No, I don't bang on about my religion really, but I just think, yeah, it's too beautiful for science. That's the only way I can put it.
Fuck science, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Fuck
it's only
that.
Numbers, isn't it?
It's only numbers. That's exactly what it is.
And look, the people at my school who were good at science, right, used to write their names in runic symbols. The fuck is that about? You write your name on your exercise book in a runic symbol. That's dinner money stuff, that isn't it? That's when you take the dinner money off them. It's rubbish, isn't it? It's just maths, isn't it?
It is. Tell us about the Harold Schmidt show. That's what I want to know about.
Oh, right.
Because you were one of the first comedians to do act in a different language, weren't you?
Yeah, I went over to Germany to do a chat show called the Harold Schmidt show, and it was basically Harold Smith essentially.
Yeah.
He was a brickie from Leytonstone. No, he wasn't. And he was, and his whole backdrop was the same as Letterman. You know, he had the kind of like Berlin backdrop and all this, and he'd read out the sort of top 10 jokes from the week and throw them over his shoulder and all that. So yeah, I got invited to do. I used to do a routine about trying not to fart during sex, as you do. Try not to, in fact. And you know, the idea of like trying to keep the fart in and all that, and yes, we likes the English humour when you all talk about fartings the whole time. You will love your bottoms. Yes, so yeah, I did that routine in German, and I remember watching it in a pub that night because it was pre-recorded at about 5 o'clock, and I'm in this pub in Cologne, and there was just this bloke sitting around the table. You could just see their face go, "This is shit." Eine Haufen Scheiße. I'm like, they're not really enjoying this. What was interesting was to go to another country and try something in a different language. So yeah, it was great. It was great for that reason. Yeah. You know. And
so, have you done more than that? Is that the only?
I used to do it in Berlin and Hamburg. There's a couple of comedy clubs I used to go over there and do it. But you know, not really. I try and stick to English. I find it easier. So do the Germans.
Yeah. Well, it's a tough. It's very admirable when you see these going.
Yeah, I mean, guys. Eddie Izzard has really embraced that, but he's embraced it as that kind of like political internationalism, you know, which I think is great. I think, you know, I've got a lot of time for him. He's a lovely bloke, as you know. And again, like Al, he's just another one of these geniuses that you're lucky to have met on your path. You know. Yeah. I mean, there's a few people who I genuinely feel I'm in the presence of genius when I watch them. Yeah. Al Murray is one of them. Eddie Izzard is another one. Bill Bailey is another one.
Yeah.
You know, and I'll just say it because they're massive stadium, iconic comics, which they are. But then there's people who you wouldn't have heard of. You just think this is just fantastic.
Yeah.
There's a double act called the Raymond and Timpkins Review,
Yes.
for example, who their act is genuinely pathetic. And that's what they say. That's their opening line. And if you just have a look at them online, or please go and see them live, and them, just the sense of joy that they can bring to an audience with the most stupid act I think I've ever seen is wondrous. That's the great thing about this. That's that you've got these amazing intellectual comics, and then you've got these guys who are slapstick, but they're all it's all still part of the same game and part of the same discipline, It's great to watch.
Well, without that variety, there used to be more variety, and probably when you started doing stand-up in the London circuit, there was a lot more literal variety.
Yeah, there was.
But
Jongleurs in Battersea, for example, actually, they had a room above a pub, and it'd take about 300 people, but it was an extensive room, and they would have trapeze in there. They'd actually put in those kind of like hanging things. So people, they'd have a trapeze act, followed by a singer, followed by a stand-up comic. But then it all became a bit more homogenised when the stand-up show, for example, started on the BBC. I was lucky enough to be on one of the first episodes of that in about 1988 or so, something like that, I can't remember now. And that was very much just the genre of just standing there with a microphone and telling jokes. And then that got reflected in the clubs as well, which is why I wasn't then doing as much music as I used to do. Well, firstly, because I probably wrote some more jokes for once, and I wish I could write a few more. And so that's you could see that happening. You could see the standardisation of it. But regardless, brilliant people still came out of that.
Sure.
Like the Rubber Bishops, who was Bill's first double act, and then he went solo, and people like Sean Locke came out of then as well. Just great comics.
And do you think, because it's gone so big on TV and stadiums, and a lot of the club comics are struggling, and Jongleurs, you just mentioned, just closed down again for the third or fourth time, but it looks like it might be gone for good now, maybe?
I think so. It's a shame, because when Jongleurs was running well, it was running well. But then they were bringing in inexperienced show managers and comics who weren't quite good enough to be headlining. So I think some of the quality went down slightly. But I think the difficult thing is to convince people to go to these smaller clubs. Yeah. A lot of people, their experience of wanting to go to a live gig is to go to a stadium or to go to the O2 to go and see Mickey Flanagan or someone like that. Yeah. Again, I'm not knocking him, he's a great comic, but I so wish that people would still go to the 100-seaters and to the 150-seaters and see people who they just don't know. I do a charity night every year at the Comedy Store for an orphanage that I help to fund, and generally the people that the public don't know are the ones who kind of go down best, because they're a surprise to them that they're as good as they are. Yeah. And also, they're the street fighters. There are comics who are out there 3 or 4 nights a week who are just, they're not at all ring rusty. They're just there, and they can just go bang for 10 to 12 minutes. Sure. And as I say, that's why I'm trying to give them a chance on that TV show. Yeah,
it's great. And a club like the Bell and Banana that you're very much associated with is still. I was playing that in 1989, that club, and I think it's still as good.
Well, it is. Every comic who is a comic has come through Banana Cabaret or the store, but actually Banana more, because the store is its own entity. It's an amazing venue. Up just up the road from here, as I'm sure people know it. It's just on the other side of Leicester Square. But Banana Cabaret, it was still kind of it still feels grassroots sometimes. And when people like your good self and Al and people come back to do it, when I get out my little black book and phone people like Richard to come and do a preview, there's never any dissension from any comics, because they know that Dave, who runs the club, that his heart and soul is in it. Yeah. So they know the room, they know Dave means it, they know that I'm going to give them a good intro and an outro and make sure that they're happy and need whatever they need in the dressing room, because I help to produce the Balham Festival every year. And so people are very loyal to the club, because Dave was there when very rich people now needed the money.
Yeah, but it's true. It's quite a rare. There are a few clubs. Downstairs at the King's Head is always.
That's another one in Crouch End. Superb. Yeah.
And the same people running it for 3 decades.
The same people. Yeah. It's amazing. And what's funny now is you're seeing comics. Children are now doing it, like Kevin Day's son has started stand-up comedy. Kevin Day's a great comic. Mark Steele's son Elliot has started to do it as well. So it's funny to see this new generation coming through, whose mums and dads were doing the circuit years ago. Yeah. So it's a family affair.
Good. I'm going to ask you an emergency question.
Oh God.
Yeah. just to change the mood a little bit. It's nice, though, isn't it? It's been good, isn't it? Yeah, see? Yeah, see? Don't know what I'm saying. She came on before, she was talking to me saying it won't be any good. She did. I've got to find a good one now for you. What do you... No, I'll talk about that enough. Have you ever had a dream that accurately predicted the future?
I'm having it now.
I think I'm having it now.
Our dreams are a very scary thing, aren't they?
Yeah.
I have that one, the anxiety one, which everybody seems to have, where I'm sitting in large rooms with no trousers on, or something like that.
Yeah.
No, surely it isn't just me. You know, that kind of slightly those kind of vulnerable dreams.
Oh yeah.
I tell you the one. When I have that disco nap, which a lot of comedians have at about 5 o'clock, where you have a little sleep between 5 and 6 before you go to your show in the evening, that can be the most traumatic dreams, because I think about, I can't find the stage, and someone like Claire Muldoon from the Hackney Empire would go, where are you? Look, the stage is here. And I'd go down all these kind of different alleyways and corridors and things. And so I think that's just a subconscious thing about actually just being a shit comic.
I have loads about doing my A-levels, just constantly about doing my A-levels, and I'm 50 years old, and I've got to go back to school, and I'm going, why am I doing my A-levels again? I've got them.
Thank God, because mine is my degree. Because I kind of like bluffed my way through my degree, because I took 2 years out in the middle as well. I was so desperate not to finish it, because I actually just wanted to do entertainment. That you're right. I wake up and go, why am I doing my finals again? I've already got a bloody 2-2, and that's what they used to call it the drinker's degree, didn't they? I got a 2-2. I could find the bar, but not the exam hall. So, well, I'm glad that we have similar anxiety. But no, I don't think I've ever predicted the future.
No. Have you ever fallen out of a hammock?
I've fallen out of a bed, but not a hammock. No, but I would find it actually physically, just dynamically impossible to get into a hammock. So the actual chance of falling out of it...
If I can get in a hammock... I love getting in a hammock.
Can you get in a hammock?
I can get in a hammock, but I have fallen out. Well, I tied up a hammock myself.
Right.
Then I turned out I don't know how to do knots. And so halfway through, the hammock
is there a
collapsed.
technique to getting it... I mean, do you have to sort of like go girth first?
I would
and then just hope that you've balanced everything?
I sort of sit in it and then swing.
Oh, right. So
you
arse
sit
first.
on the edge.
Ah, right, arse first, so you get in.
Swing round like that.
Oh, no, that'd be me flopping out, so to speak. I'll be flopping out of my hammock at that point.
It's been long. My wife gave me a hammock for one of my birthdays a few years ago, but then in the end we left it outside too long. It was on some poles, so you could have it anywhere.
No, hammocks are aerodynamically wrong for a man of my stature. Size, weight.
All right, here's a religious question for you to answer.
Oh, no.
Thomas
Aquinas, that's always the answer.
I let it go with the science thing.
If you watch University Challenge, the answer is always Thomas Aquinas.
Why did Jesus say, "Why hast thou forsaken me" on the cross? Had he forgotten about the plan that he and his dad had come up with to save mankind?
Do you know what? It is probably just science, isn't it?
Oh dear.
Yeah, no, the thing is that when you say... I do like that, it's very good, you smarmy bastard, but the thing is... fucking creationist. No, you're an evolutionist, and it's great.
I believe in evolution.
All right, so do I, sort of.
Yeah, well, I mean,
It didn't all happen in 6 days, that's nonsense.
Yeah.
It took about 9.
At least.
At least. That's great. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? Yeah. It probably just hurt a bit, didn't it?
When you'd be confused.
Yeah, and if you're being crucified, it's not just, it's going to smart, isn't it? Yeah. So that was the thing. He was just smart. Like bloody vinegar, and he's what'd you do that for? Dad, what's... Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can see that. There's a lovely joke I remember. It's at the Last Supper, and Jesus says to the gathered, he says, "One of you tonight will betray me." Right? So Peter says, "Is it me, Lord?" And Jesus goes, "No." Paul says, "Is it me, Lord?" And Jesus says, "No." And Judas says, "Is it me, Lord?" And Jesus says, "Is it me, Lord?" It's just a great... I love the idea of a sarcastic Jesus, don't you? It's brilliant.
Very good. There are 2 entries for John Maloney on IMDb, and I think they're both you.
Oh, okay.
Did you write for TV Burp for 2
Many years
2
ago,
episodes?
in the first few episodes
Yeah.
of Harry Hill's TV Burp.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. Harry and I, again, started around the same time. He started a couple of years later than me. Harry was the first... there used to be a club called the Red Rose on the Seven Sisters Road in North London, and Harry was doing his first ever open spot. He was still a medic at St George's, and I was privileged enough to be on the bill that night and watched this guy who, this was only his like 3rd gig or something, blow the bloody roof off.
Yeah.
And there was, I sounded like Michael Caine there. We're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off. Transubstantiation, you got to be fucking joking. So Harry came on, and his opening line was, "Never go to a candlelit dinner with a moth." It was just a great line. It was just a great line. And he had 6 more minutes of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to him afterwards, "God, man, you blew that away. You were just head and shoulders, mate." And he used to go down to a club in Brixton every Friday before he started to watch people. So he hadn't cheated, but when a lot of us started, there was no template. You would just get up there and try and do it. Whereas Harry at that point was able to go to an established club, the White Horse in Brixton, run by Roland and Claire Muldoon. And he said that he used to go there every Friday. He'd finish his shift and go down there and watch. But regardless, he was still fantastic and still is.
Yeah. It was I wrote for TV, but for about the first 2 episodes. So you must have come in after I decided to start. It was a very tough show to write for.
It wasn't easy, and I remember one of the producers was quite sort of like whiplashy, if you can't come up with a joke, you've got to sit there until you do, and that's not quite how it... Well, I can't write like that.
No.
I find it quite difficult.
Yeah.
Sometimes at 1:30 in the morning, I write something down, and I look at it next day and go, "Oh yeah, that's got legs," or I look at it and go, "What the hell was that?" With some comics, like Mark Thomas, for example, was always very disciplined, where he would literally sit there with a blank piece of paper and just write until something happened.
Yeah.
And I wish, I guess, that kind of discipline myself, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I think TV Burp, it was just because you had to watch so much stuff.
Yeah.
Dan Mayer ended up working on it for a long time. He's a fantastic scriptwriter. He's written for loads and loads.
Oh yeah, they were far.
But I think I think they were all, including Harry, starting to go slightly insane with that show.
Yeah,
because they said you're watching TV normally, and all you're doing is looking in the background.
You're looking in the background
to see what's going on, to see if you can spot the funny thing happening in the background.
But Harry was, as I say, from day one was fantastic. Yeah. Matthew Hall. Harry Hall he was originally, but then became Harry Hill because of some equity thing.
Right. Yeah.
But he's brilliant. Yeah. And really nice bloke as well.
He is an excellent guy. You've got to get someone to collate your IMDb entries so they're on the same page.
All right, okay.
You're down as a writer, as a separate writer to John Maloney.
Right.
Well, and then I'm not sure that... Go and have a look at it.
Okay.
Because I'm not sure you wrote all of the things, but I knew you'd written for TV Burp, so I thought...
All right, well, what do you think I didn't write?
Let's have a look.
Oh, no, don't. Oh, no, don't.
I'll show you afterwards. We'll have
okay.
I just like to make sure the internet is correct.
Yeah.
So it's a long job to go through.
Because it's only a little thing to correct, isn't it? The internet.
And you won the All-Irish Flaida at the age of 14. What is that?
Yes, Flaceol, which is the Irish for music competition. Ceol is music and flat is meeting or competition. And I was an accordion player. I won it for a few years. When I was young, and it didn't really hold any credibility. Right. It still doesn't.
No.
To be playing air accordion in front of your mirror, it's far more air guitar. It looks far sexier than standing there going. Just look like a fat butterfly. So it's never a good look.
No. My granddad had an accordion.
Yeah.
He was an Irish fan. Is it very much an Irish instrument, or is it just I think it's an instrument from...
Yeah, I think when it comes to music sessions, you need one louder instrument to keep everybody else in check. So I did a lot of music when I was a kid. I did enjoy it, although I didn't like being in pubs that young. Really, it was just a little bit scary sometimes. Yeah. But which is why I hate them now. Yeah. I prefer wine bars. Especially in Balham.
Look, John, it's been lovely to talk to you. I've got to go back to Hertfordshire, so it's a long way.
Well, it is. Yeah, I've just got to,
Down to Balham. I miss Balham.
Yeah, I've just got to go back to a house that's got £1 million equity. Vote Labour. So, no, it's been interesting. I was really scared about doing this.
I know. I'm surprised about that.
No, you know, I'm not. I'm genuinely not the kind of hard-nosed fucker that a lot of people think I am.
You aren't.
No, but, you know, because you carry an amazing reputation in the industry. You know, because you're one of the best comics that Britain has. You know, for the last 20, 25 years I've known you, and the same with all the work that you did with Stuart as well. And I know how amazingly successful this is, and I'm thinking, I'm doing this with Rich Herring, and I'm Manduic Iannucci. I should be marking books. You know, but I've really enjoyed it, and hopefully people will go, who the fuck's he? Would just think, oh, he was all right. You know.
Well, go and see some live comedy.
Please do.
Go and see John doing stand-up. Go and listen to John's radio show when it comes out again.
Yeah, the John Maloney show. It's I believe it might be March, April next year. That's when it's like penciled to go out. But the other stuff is out there on iPlayer.
And are you planning to go back to the Fringe? Have you got another show in?
I might be going in August. Yeah. Because I'd like to run some live stuff through from the shows, because there's stuff that's written that was performed on radio, and I'd like to sort of just make it expand some of it more to a new hour. Cool. I love Edinburgh.
Yeah, it's good. And, you know, it's what you're saying is absolutely correct. There's so many fantastic comedians out there that I'm hoping to talk to lots more.
Yeah, well, every bit of London, you'll find a comedy club. You know, like in Balham, you've got Banana Cabaret. In King's Head, in Crouch End, you've got the Backyard Cabaret out in Whitechapel. You know, you've got the Bearcat in Twickenham. You've got the Headliners in Chiswick. You know, there's enough around, and you just see some amazing people, and then people who are really well known turn up and try some new stuff as well. I mean, of course, when you've got the store here in London, just here in Leicester Square, of course, it goes without saying. But I'm saying places around London as well. There's still a thriving circuit, you know, and the best of British comedy is out there. So, you know, don't go to a stadium and queue up for half an hour for a warm lager and watch somebody on a video screen, which I'm sure your kind of discerning audience wouldn't do anyway.
They would never do.
No, they wouldn't.
Do you hear how they felt about Jim Davidson?
Yes,
I
know. I know. They still haven't forgiven me for that. Yeah. No, too bad. But you know, go to your local gymkhana. Don't go to your local stadium. So, sorry, just trying to find the class of audience. But no, it's been lovely. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for coming on, ladies and gentlemen. It's John Maloney. Thank you very much. We're back next week with Jan Ravens and someone else. Someone else. Thank you very much. How'd you like them sky potatoes?